This is Hammett.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support this show, get your bonus episodes and ad-free episodes. Jessica mentioned last week that it's apparently, who knew, our 10-year anniversary of doing this show. And we asked people on the Facebook group if they had thoughts, comments, whatever.
Yeah, how they found us, what they learned, all that stuff. So I'm just going to read them throughout this because some of them are really nice and some of them are pretty funny.
Yeah, let's read one of them right now.
This is from Melissa. I was aware of the show through the Atheist experience many years ago when it was still in interview format. I couldn't really get into it because I just don't find interviews interesting. Honestly, Melissa, big same. I tried it again about a year ago and love it. I became a patron because I couldn't get enough. I get so excited when I see a new episode and equally sad when it ends. Please don't stop making the podcast. Jessica, a few weeks ago, Heaven didn't get your very funny comment, but you'll be happy to know I laughed coffee out my nose.
Aw,
that's great.
Glad.
Thank you, Melissa.
And how dare you destroy that coffee like that?
Yeah.
Blasphemy.
I wish I remembered what a very funny comment it was that you didn't get because that doesn't narrow it down. All right,
and we'll read more of those as we're going through.
Yes.
But let's start this week with Louisiana because they are on the verge of becoming the first state in the country to require public schools to post a copy of the Ten Commandments in every classroom.
Sure, I think in New Orleans, Christians mainly have to worry about classrooms and not any sin anywhere else.
Nope.
Everywhere else is fine.
So when the flooding happens again, the Ten Commandments will be safe.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, the state Senate actually made some revisions that might make it legal, but right now, I don't know if it's enough to avoid potential lawsuits. So here's the story here. It's House Bill 71. It was sponsored by Republican State Representative Dodie Horton. And initially, when she proposed this bill, she said, here's the gist of what her version of the bill said. The Ten Commandments shall be displayed, has to be displayed, on a poster or framed document that is at least 11 by 14 inches. That's part one.
That's really big.
I mean, yeah, it's a poster-sized thing. The text of the Ten Commandments shall be the central focus of the poster or framed document.
They learned lessons.
And shall be printed in a large, easily readable font. So we'll talk about how you can manipulate.
They covered their ass on the font has to be big and readable. Well, although they didn't say English, did they?
That's a good point. We'll get back to that in a second.
Ooh,
now,
love loopholes.
A couple of years ago, this same woman, she proposed a Don't Say Gay bill that would have banned all discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity through 8th grade.
In Louisiana, home of New Orleans.
Yeah, while also that bill would have also prohibited all K through 12 teachers from even mentioning their own orientation or identity, which is to say if a teacher
even if they're straight? So, like, I couldn't talk about my husband. I would just have to be like, my partner.
Yeah, I don't know. But if a gay teacher said, oh, yeah, my husband and I did this over the weekend, that would be penalized?
Jail?
I don't know.
Straight to jail?
Again, it's one of those things that's an attempt to erase the existence of LGBTQ people. That bill, thankfully, didn't go anywhere, but this is who we're talking about. This sort of
very, like, Russia 2014 of like, oh, we don't have gay people in Russia.
Yeah,
like,
there's zero in Louisiana. So this Ten Commandments bill, however, even though it's by the same crazy person who clearly has an agenda,
Where?
sailed through the state house on an 82-19 vote. This bill that said, no, you got to put up the Ten Commandments in every classroom. Like, it wasn't even close.
What's the makeup of the Louisiana State House?
I'll look it up in a bit. But
I assume it's much more conservative than I would think because I think
it's a red state, but it's not 82-19 red state.
Yeah, what the fuck?
So the version that made it through the state Senate after they made some revisions passed 30-8. So, like, that wasn't close either. So some Democrats voted for this bill in both chambers. All the no votes came from Democrats, but some of the yes votes also came from Democrats. Okay, a couple things about the bill. Why are some Democrats against it, you might wonder, besides the obvious? First of all, the bill that she wrote specifies the text, and it's a very King James version that literally says this is what's got to be on the posters. Okay. No shenanigans. The 10 Commandments. I am the Lord thy God. Lord is in all caps.
Yeah.
And then it goes through whatever you would expect the 10 Commandments to be. I'm not going to read them all. Technically, there are anywhere between 11 and 12 items on this list, which...
What? What do you mean?
Like, if you go through the thou shalt, the way they've divvied it up, there are more than 10
12
items on this list.
commandments?
Yeah.
Wait,
I think they
what are
separated.
you talking about? There's 10. There's
All right.
like specifically 10. That's the whole fucking thing is there's
you
10.
count. You count.
Okay.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
1.
Thou shalt not make to thyself any graven images.
2.
Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain.
3.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
4.
Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
5.
Thou shalt not kill.
6.
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
7.
Thou shalt not steal.
8.
Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
9.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house.
10.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
I don't think that's OG.
So again, it's not 10.
I can't covet my neighbor's
The way they
manservant?
listed it here, don't you dare covet the manservant.
Oh boy, the pool boy from next door has got to go.
That's how Jerry Falwell got away with it. Again, if you number this list, it's more than 10, and congratulations, you have a better education than Dodie Horton. So these people, the same Republicans
this feels
pushing
like a
this
tremendous oversight that we're just kind of skating over.
We
They
are
have the
skating
wrong
over
amount
it.
of commandments.
Listen, these people don't know how
This
to
is
read
preposterous.
the Bible, much less
Okay,
count
fine.
up. Anyway, they didn't number the list, which is telling. They just said
Do
this
you
is
think
what's got to be on.
they numbered it and they're like, oh shit, it's 11. Make it bullet points. They'll never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody can count past 10 because they ran out of fingers.
Listen, their priorities in school.
Reading, writing, arithmetic, religion.
Yeah, there you go.
That's pretty funny of me.
The same people who don't want high schoolers learning about sex, systemic racism, the existence of LGBTQ people, they have very specific things they want kindergartners to know about their neighbors' maid servants.
Yeah, like
And manservants.
how do you explain to a 6-year-old if they're not allowed to know what sex is, what coveting thy neighbor's wife means?
Pictures.
Also, once again, I truly want to emphasize that these commandments were clearly written for men, and therefore I think all women should be exempt, except for lesbians who may be, and bisexuals. Anyway, straight women, finally, we got something. The Christian church did good.
I mean, the list wouldn't solve anything. I know all of you know this, but like the list wouldn't solve any real problems. There's no potential school shooter who has ever plotted out a path of destruction, but then saw the 10 Commandments and was like, oh, thou shalt not. My bad.
Well, and also,
my bad.
This is a stupid point to bring up, but there's also something about like having the 10 Commandments everywhere means for sure people aren't going to read them or pay attention to them. Right? Like it's like those OSHA posters in every workplace. Like nobody reads them, but they're fucking everywhere, right? Like I feel like they're just
a symbolic gesture
watering down
to
their
push
own message.
Christianity into the schools. Like, and if students need a sign to remind them not to murder other people, they got bigger issues, which means it would be great if Louisiana, passed a bill to get more mental health professionals in the schools.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that. What they are currently considering as we record this is a different bill to get Christian chaplains in schools. That they're working on. Obviously, a bunch of those commandments.
The chaplains in schools thing has kind of blown up. I've been hearing it on a lot of other
that's
platforms.
been the big Christian nationalist push this
Has it?
session.
Oh.
Yeah. And several of the commandments are also flat out useless. They have nothing to do with morality. It's Christian specific about, don't believe in
Idolatry.
false gods, don't make graven images, don't take God's name in vain,
What's
keep
a
the Sabbath
graven
day.
image? Is that like sexy or is that like religious for somebody else?
No sexy Jesus statues. That's what that is.
Oh, God, they have to cover up that six-pack.
By the way, since we're talking about thou shalt not kill, Louisiana is currently trying to expand its options for the death penalty so they can have more state-sanctioned murders.
Gang,
and Dodie Horton herself said...
You just yelled at me.
This made me mad. Dodie Horton herself said, they asked her, so you're for expanding the death penalty options here, get new drugs to do it. What about, rapists? Do you think they should be executed? And she said, I'd love to hang them from the highest tree. Which, listen, I have no sympathy for rapists. It is telling, though, that she's like, let me tell you how I would murder them using my power, which you would think conflicts with the...
Thou shalt not kill.
Yeah. Just
I
saying.
feel like they really can't get their shit straight.
Yeah. What's the educational benefit, of course, of telling children they can't have any other gods before the one true Christian God, or that they can't make false idols or take God's name in
Or the
vain, or have to
Sabbath day
rest on
thing.
Sunday or whatever day they decide is the Sabbath, or that kindergartners can't have sex with people they're not married to, or they can't want what their neighbors have? Like, in any sense, I know George Carlin has done the whole bit, but I'm saying, like, wanting what other people have is the essence of capitalism.
Honestly, you could have accidentally gotten into that bit and ended with, so I guess it's just don't be an asshole, or whatever the punchline of that is, and I would have gone along for the ride.
If a book said kindergartners need to be taught not to commit adultery, and it was written down with pictures or something, the same Christians would want it banned. Yeah. And which teachers are clamoring for this? Like, who's lobbying the legislature for the
they don't give a shit
ability?
what teachers want or kids.
Yeah, no teacher is saying, hey, congressperson or it's my state representative, I need the ability to tell kids they're going to burn in hell for all of eternity if they don't follow this set of mostly arbitrary rules. So Texas tried to do this.
Wait, hold on. Before we kind of move on, I also want to speak to the execution piece of it, because there is a lot going on behind the scenes there that I don't think people are aware of, because the drugs that they use to euthanize human beings are either not available or too
and that's
expensive
why
or
they're
something
passing
like
this
that.
bill. They're trying to get more ways of murdering.
So they're trying to fucking gas chamber people. They have fucked up so many executions in the last few years because they're untested means. And by the way, doctors can't be involved because of the Hippocratic Oath. It is the fact that we are fighting tooth and nail to keep the death penalty in the face of fewer and fewer viable options and reliable options. It is so disgusting to watch. It's so fucking disgusting.
In addition, when Texas tried to pass this bill, there was a Democratic lawmaker, fantastic representative, James Tallarico, who actually got to go to, like, he was part of the committee hearing where they discussed this bill. And if you go back to that episode, whenever that was last year, he dismantled the arguments for why this needed to be in classrooms, in part because he called out the hypocrisy of the Texas Republicans who were trying to get it passed and how they violated a whole bunch of these things themselves. This Louisiana bill also said, the House version, the initial version, it said schools either had to pay for the posters themselves, whether through their own funds or through donated funds.
The classically well-funded Louisiana school system. I'm just going to look that up.
It did say they could also accept donated displays. And this is interesting. Nowhere in her bill did it say what the penalty would be for any school that refused to participate in this Christian charade.
Oh.
So that's weird.
Okay.
There's just, as one federal judge once said about a Ten Commandments monument outside a public school, there's no context plausibly suggesting that this plainly religious message has any broader secular meaning. This is very much a Christian set of rules, most of which are irrelevant and none of which need to be posted in every classroom. So it's not just a bad idea. And I know it's a bad idea because Republicans who supported this bill tried to downplay how religious it was because they know they have to lie in order to get the support they need. This is Adam Bass, who is a state senator. He said, the purpose is not solely religious. It's the Ten Commandments' historical significance, which is simply one of many documents that display the history of our country and foundation of our legal system. Like, it's historically significant.
Thinking of the Bill of Rights?
That's another document, and so is the Ten Commandments.
If you want to show something from the country's foundation, I would argue that the Ten Commandments aggressively ain't it.
Yeah.
And you know what it is? The Bill of Rights.
Yeah. So when the state Senate got this bill and they had to pass it, I think even they knew, well, if we're saying this is not a religious document, it's one of many historical documents, we probably can't just say put up the Christian list and not the Bill of Rights or anything like that. So they made revisions to this bill.
Oh, good.
That came with a bunch of changes. Now
every classroom needs 17 posters, all paid for by the teachers.
Yeah, pretty much. Out of your pocket that you're already using to pay for other stuff. So in the Senate's version of the bill, the posters all have to come, you know, like if you go to a museum and you see a work of art and then next to it, there's the little plaque that says who the artist is and like, here's the story
the
that
year,
you might
the
need
medium,
to know. That's what these posters now have to come with. There's a disclaimer that offers
Christ.
the supposed historical context, citing the Ten Commandments.
Please read it in its entirety.
Sure, let's see.
I would love to hear it.
The history of the Ten Commandments in American public education.
I love having teacher voice.
The Ten Commandments were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. Around the year 1688, the New England Primer became the first published American textbook and was the equivalent of a first-grade reader. The New England Primer was used in public schools throughout the United States for more than 150 years to teach Americans to read.
What the fuck is a
and contain
primer?
more than 40 questions about the Ten Commandments.
Oh.
I'm not done yet.
Okay.
The Ten Commandments were also included in public school textbooks published by educator William McGuffey, a noted university president and professor. A version of his famous McGuffey Readers was written in the early 1800s and became one of the most popular textbooks in the history
this?
of American education. It's a small plaque. Selling more than 100 million copies.
Who
Copies
cares?
of the McGuffey Readers are still available today.
Then
We're not done.
frame
We're not
those.
done. The Ten Commandments also appeared in textbooks published by Noah Webster, in which were widely used in American public schools, along
Noah
with
Webster
America's first
British?
comprehensive dictionary that Webster also published. His textbook, The American Spelling Book, contained the Ten Commandments and sold more than 100 million copies for use by public school children all across the nation and was still available for use in American public schools in the year 1975.
Jesus
That's on the plaque.
Christ.
So
That
not only is no
so
one
boring.
gonna read
I started
that.
Googling. I thought Noah Webster was British for some reason.
Not
He's
only
from
is no one going to
Connecticut.
read the plaque, no one's going to read the Ten Commandments, but also it's telling that they're like, you guys, we use this Christian list way before we allowed Muslims and Jews and everyone else
Truly.
to get into this country.
What a
and therefore, we should just keep doing it, which, like, if you would need to go back to 1688
Yeah.
to make your case for when everything was great and Christianity was in schools, you're not in history class, are you, really?
No, I guess my question is why
Before
is
we
there
lo-
substantial support for this?
Before we knew what evolution was, people were totally fine with Christianity. So why won't you guys let us have this?
Well, and it's also such a survivorship bias thing too, of like, see, I did great, and it's like waves at an entire generation who is undereducated and lives in slums.
the
Like, yeah.
plaque for American Indians is right next to it.
Oh boy,
It says nothing.
it says nothing because they don't give a shit.
So that's one of the changes the state Senate made to this bill. They're like, if we put this disclaimer explaining this has nothing to do with Christianity, it's all about historical, context here, that'll make it better. Another change is that the bill, while it would require schools to put the Ten Commandments in every classroom, it allows schools
So much
to put
flexibility.
up copies of the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, and the Northwest Ordinance. Those three.
I
Only
don't
those
even
three.
know what the Northwest Ordinance is, Heme, and I like history. What the fuck are they doing here?
And those things would suggest the commandments are one of many older documents that inspired our legal system. But like, if the bill says the Christian list is mandatory, but the ostensibly secular items are optional, that is still an illegal promotion of religion.
What were the other ones? The Bill of Rights?
Declaration of, I'm sorry, no, not the Bill of Rights.
Oh.
The Mayflower Compact.
The Mayflower Compact.
We're going back to slave days. Declaration of Independence and the Northwest Ordinance.
I would think that they would have the, I can't
All
think of what
three
it's
of those
called.
documents, by the way, all affirm the importance of faith in one way or the other, which is why they said those three and not the Bill of Rights.
I see.
But again, those three were all written long before we had non-Christians anywhere, before evolution was known, things like that. So it's like, that's your idea of saying, see, historical context. Everyone loves God, and by God we mean Jesus.
They
and the
didn't
specific
even
interpretation of
understand germ
Christianity.
theory. They thought miasma was the reason people got sick. What's the one?
You put up these posters on the wall without washing your hands because they didn't know.
What's the one I'm thinking of? The European British one that's like the first contract between a king and his people.
Like Magna Carta?
Magna Carta. That's what I was thinking of.
So, like, and by the way, it's not just people like us who dislike this. Don't forget, a lot of conservative Christians don't like the idea of their biblical list placed aside these other documents because they think theirs should be front and center.
Oh, this is a classic too Christian, not Christian enough situation.
So, and here's the other thing. The Senate version of the bill says no public funds can be used for these displays. So no teachers, schools, you don't have to pay for this. Only donations of posters
But
or donations of cash to purchase the
But they're
posters will
required
be
to put
accepted.
them up.
But
So if
would
they
have to
don't
put
get
them up.
donations,
Right.
what happens?
Well,
Do they go to jail?
I guess no penalty in the revised version either. But again, there are Christians who will make sure every school has them. I'm not worried that they won't have them. But the bottom line is schools will still be forced to put up the Ten Commandments posters, which means the Senate's changes probably are not enough to avoid lawsuits. In Utah, when they tried to pull the same exact stunt, while saying like, oh, well, we'll add other historical documents to the mix. But even then, they said in their bill, well, those documents could only be discussed, not plastered on classroom walls. Again, without these amendments, the Louisiana bill would have been dead on arrival. But even with the Senate's changes, it's really not any better. This bill is so bad that when Oklahoma tried to pass an identical version earlier this year, it failed in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, and they have Ryan Walter fucking
that's
shit
right.
up down there.
As one Democrat in Oklahoma, the one Democrat in Oklahoma said at the time, the Christian nationalist bill was a, quote, unconstitutional, exclusionary, and dangerous bill. By endorsing a state-sanctioned religion, they undermined the foundational principle of religious freedom upon which the United States was founded. So, on Thursday of last week, after seeing the state Senate's revised version of the bill, which, as I'm explaining, doesn't really fix any of the big problems here.
But at least it removes all of its teeth, too.
Some. It says, let's put a disclaimer on here and give teachers the option of putting other stuff, but it still says you have to post
no
the
penalty,
Christian
I
list.
think,
With no penalty.
is defanging it a bit.
The penalty was forgotten in the original version, but again, the fact that there's no penalty, but the bill still says you are forced to put this up in your classroom, they're still saying you have to put a Christian list in your room. So last week, the ACLU of Louisiana, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and the Southern Poverty Law Center all sent out a joint press release basically saying, don't do it. We're watching you.
You guys do not want to poke this bear.
They said, quote, this bill is unconstitutional. The state may not require public schools to display the Ten Commandments in classrooms, ... The governor should know that politicians should not be forcing religious scripture on students. Our public schools are not Sunday schools, and students of all faiths or no faith should feel welcome in them. What they did not say is if the governor signs this bill, we're going to file a lawsuit. But they're basically saying, don't do it.
Yeah.
We're watching you.
Yeah, we see you.
Now, here's what has to happen now. The revised Senate bill is going to go back to the House.
Okay.
As I'm saying this right now, today, on May 23rd, the House is considering what they want to do with the Senate bill. If they pass it, which they did overwhelmingly the first time around when it was even worse, then it's up to the governor, who's Republican, to sign it. Odds are he's going to sign it, which means a lawsuit seems like it's going to happen. But this is going back to your earlier point. I think Dodie Horton made a key mistake in the proposed legislation because, like you said, it never said the Ten Commandments had to be written in English. And when we talked about this in Oklahoma, activist Chaz Stevens mocked up posters he intended to send to schools if that bill was passed, which he's now mocking up for Louisiana if this one passes.
Yeah, we've seen these before,
and he's also made new versions.
Oh, nice.
And by the way, he did this in Louisiana and Texas when they both passed laws saying you have to put In God We Trust.
This is in the last few
schools.
years, right?
Yes.
So we've seen his work before.
The Louisiana In God We Trust bill that was also that was sponsored by Dodie Horton as well. He shared with me, Chaz did, some of the posters he now plans to donate to Louisiana schools. So yes, you have the Arabic version of the Arabic language Ten Commandments bill.
Obviously.
You have one that's a mirror image of the Ten Commandments because it's in English.
Yeah.
And it is legible.
Yeah.
But you would have to look in a mirror to read it. I like that one.
Or you can just practice reading shit backwards. That feels like a skill you should have.
Yeah. There is one version that is written exactly as the Christians want it, but it has a pentagram in the background.
That's pretty funny.
Uh-huh.
That's a good piece of business.
But my favorite one is, if you want to look at this, it has everything written out, but it reads with 4 words in ransom letter words, because he's highlighting the important stuff. Yeah, it says, thou shalt not kill, but kill is in giant letters overwhelming the poster.
At the end.
And it says adultery in big letters, and thou shalt not steal, steals in big letters. And it says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his, and then in big letters, ass. nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Now, that was not...
ass like a donkey?
Yes, but that is not in the version of the bill that... It says cattle in her bill, so he wouldn't be able to put the ass in big letters. Good try, though. He'll make revisions.
Very funny.
So that's where we're at. That's what Louisiana wants to do for students.
It feels like there's two different universes. One is that, like,
can't believe these people are going to win the election.
they're not going to win the election. But one is that just like I feel like you and I are living in this state where, like, government is in gridlock, people are doing bad shit, nothing can get through. And then you go to Louisiana and they are just sailing, they're using all of their political capital on this dumb shit that's not going to be able to.
You think what, like Minnesota with the bare minimum margins of a Democratic trifecta, like a 1-vote Senate majority or like a couple vote House majority, and what they've done to like make sure kids get lunch in schools and education and and Michigan is the same way.
Truly.
Then you see what is Louisiana or Arkansas or states like that doing with their trifecta. You see the priorities that these different states and different parties have.
That's actually a really, really, really good, not actually,
What do you
that is
do
a really
when
good
you
point.
have power?
That's such a good point because we saw it with when Trump was elected and
Yeah.
they had all of the votes and willpower and momentum.
And you're seeing it in Illinois, where we live too, where there is an overwhelming Democratic trifecta, and you see what they're getting passed.
Yeah.
And it's like
minimum wage is going up.
It's not that everything's perfect, but in terms of what they could get done, it's like this is good.
Abortion's
it's a nice time to live in
protected.
Illinois.
Yeah, it really is. All right, this is from Dell. I found you guys a couple of years ago through references from the Scathing Atheist.
Aw, thanks.
The two of you helped me so much in moving past my angry atheist stage and into someone who advocates for atheism in productive and positive ways. Thank you both for all you do. Keep up the amazing work. And here's to many more episodes that have Jessica's wonderful singing.
Oh my God.
Yay. I'm going to do a couple short ones too. Rochelle, I think, or Rachel, but I think it's Rochelle. I'm so happy you have each other to make my Friday listening better. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. Casey said I'd been aware of it for a minute, but when I heard Jessica on God Awful Movies is when I subscribed and became a patron.
Oh, thank you.
That actually, we got a few listeners off that.
That's
I must have
awesome.
been pretty entertaining.
All right. Should I move
Yeah.
to this
We got a
next
lot
story?
more, but we'll
All right.
slam jam through them later.
This is a wild, interesting story that I got some links to, and it's one that I didn't see in any news article anywhere. It's like someone just sends
Ooh,
me
you
Facebook
love
posts.
these.
I love those. So here's the story. We talked not too long ago about a Christian men's conference that took place at James River Church in Springfield, Missouri.
With the sword swallower?
With the sword
Yes,
swallower.
this is a great story.
And I won't go into it because we already discussed it, but the opening the men's conference festivities was a professional sword swallower who did a whole performance with his shirt off. It was dangerous, but that's how you got to do that performance.
Yep.
Mark Driscoll, the abusive preacher, came on stage like later and said, like, that's gay. What are you doing, basically? And how dare this church?
Well,
like,
also that he's a stripper.
yeah, he compared
pretty-
he compared what the acrobat was doing to a woman on a pole.
Which is degrading to both the acrobat and strippers. Have you ever seen a stripper on a stripper pole? Holy shit, those girls can haul balls up that pole. I remember
Yes.
I was in Montana the first time I went to a strip club, and it was like a 2-story pole, and my girl was in 3-inch heels, just hauling her ass up that pole. Firemen can't even do that shit. They
Yes.
only go down the pole.
Yes.
Anyway, that's my love letter to strippers.
Mark Driscoll condemned it, and then the pastor of the church, John Lindell, yelled from the audience, "You're out of line, Mark," something like that. Mark Driscoll storms off stage. Later on,
I just love imagining these white guys just
Oh, man.
agitated together and not
then-
knowing how to handle it because they don't have women to emotionally regulate them.
the day after they had like some performative apologies on stage, but it just blew up afterwards too because the two men are sniping at each other.
Oh, it's so good. Let them fight, I
know.
say.
Driscoll called Lindell demonic. Good times. Anyway, so that's what happened weeks ago. This is the same church, by the way, where last year a woman claimed that God regrew 3 of her toes. Same church.
Did you tell me, or
I
did
did tell
somebody
you
else
that.
tell me that somebody, like, you got an inside line? Someone's like, she's still got no toes. Was
Yeah.
that you?
Probably.
Okay.
So anyway, last month, and I missed this when it happened because it wouldn't have made my radar, but this is shortly after the men's conference happened, a woman who attends that church, as far as I could tell, her name is Rahela Petian, but she posted her thoughts on Facebook about all this, and imagine a 2,000-word Facebook post that is also a giant block of text and written in stream of consciousness.
Of course, I can imagine that.
It's not easy to read. So I'm going to paraphrase.
And this is a woman who attended this men's conference.
No, attends the church that sponsored the conference.
Okay, thank you.
But she basically, I'm going to try to get through the important parts of her block of text. She basically said Mark Driscoll should have been allowed to give his sermon on stage at the men's conference, and why was our pastor shouting him down from the audience? Here's what she wrote. If Mark would have been allowed to explain himself and continue his sermon, I have no doubt in my heart that two things would have happened. One, this entire division and real-life desperate house husbands drama would never have happened.
That's very funny of her.
That is good. ... Number two, we may have had the opportunity to see the largest revival, repentance, and healing/restoration of not just 576 men who were at the conference, but possibly 10,000 plus men who would have healed from pornography, sexual sin, adultery, cheating, emotional and psychological strongholds, and other addictions. All right.
What?
Setting aside the delusional...
So she's saying that if Mark Driscoll had been able to speak, he would have cast a spell that fixed everybody?
Or maybe live stream to other dudes who are not at the conference, and he would have fixed so many things, but you didn't let the man talk.
I mean, honestly, I believe that for myself. I believe I could fix many, many things, but people keep asking me to shut up because, ma'am, this is a Wendy's.
Setting aside this delusion that 10,000 men, everyone watching or participating would have been healed from pornography or something.
Pornography.
Which, okay.
Speaking of which, the new season of Bridgerton came out, and I want to talk about it in the bonus episode.
She also criticized Lindell's handling of the situation the following week because he did a live stream for his church audience, like when they have their usual sermons, and he explained to his church audience why he said what he said, how he was moving forward, but he never apologized for anything he did. And here's what she...
Why would he?
Why would he? Here's what she wrote in her block of text. I mean, anything, all caps, would have been good to hear. Some form of remorse. Did pride get in the way of John? There is no doubt about that. Okay, so she's criticizing her own pastor, saying, you should have, why didn't you apologize?
I don't think that was pride. I think that was an instinct of we invited a man here and maybe we shouldn't immediately trash him. Although that is one of their favorite things to do.
Now, Lindell had accused Mark Driscoll of creating controversy in part to, quote, generate clicks and sales. That's what he said to his congregation.
Lindell?
The pastor of the church said Mark Driscoll was just trying to stir shit up to generate clicks and sales.
Probably.
But this woman on Facebook says... Yeah, but so our church always does that. And here's what she said. She said she has been there for 18 years, so she knows this church. But one thing I know for certain, the last 2 years, we have seen a great shift from the Holy One to fame to YouTube followers, to market the church not only locally, but to the depths of international agenda to increase, she wrote traffickers, but to increase traffic online, to open the online campus, to bless the church more and more financially. And then she says, speaking from stage, of 20 to 25 million in revenue growth, to share, click, tell your testimony, ... She basically says, our church is doing a plenty. You advocate about money.
I zoned out about a second after she started reading.
Imagine reading 2,000 words of this.
I don't want to.
But basically she's saying, you guys brag on stage about how you made $20 to $25 million or raised more than the previous year. She says, what agenda has our leadership had in the last few years greater than ever before? Financial growth and fame. Being known.
Okay.
So, all right.
At first, I was like, why are we reading this woman's wall of text? But now I feel like we've landed on something like a point.
Again, I had to search for those little words. But they were in there.
Control F action.
So, as a member.
Capitalism.
And as a fervent Christian, she just didn't appreciate how the church was handling this controversy, which she says it basically helped inspire. Mm-hmm. Her post suggested this is the culmination of things she's been thinking for a really long time.
Yeah.
Not something she just came up this weekend. And it's not that she wanted to quit the church. She just wants the church to stick to its stated mission about Jesus, and they were getting off track. So here she is doing some course correcting.
So in the trillion attendees of mega churches
Yeah.
across this great nation of ours, one woman has been like, hey, gang, I feel like you've lost the plot. And it's newsworthy.
I
So
found
that's
that
where we are,
Yeah.
is that all of the Christians are like, no, this is absolutely outstanding. I really wanted Joel Osteen's teeth to get bigger and whiter. I'm glad my tithing went to that and his
for his
Bentley.
dental visits.
His
Yes.
dental visits.
Now, I missed that post when it aired because why would anyone
'Cause
care?
why would you read that?
Yeah, why would I read that? So last week, and this is the one that was sent to me by somebody who's like, you should check this out. Last week, it's been about a month since she made that post.
Okay.
I think she's made one other public Facebook post about something totally
And she's
irrelevant.
just a member. She's
just
not
a member.
anybody.
Nope.
Okay.
This time she makes another post. This one is, I think, like over 4,000 words.
No.
It's much longer.
That's too many words.
4330. I counted.
Jesus fucking
Well,
Christ.
I copied pasted, but
Do
40,
you know how
300
much writing that is?
on Facebook.
Fuck me.
Yes. So all a giant block of text again, which I'm not even like. Listen, not everyone writes in paragraphs. That's fine. I'm not judging this woman for that, but it's hard to read. And if you read the comments, they're like, "Honey, I can't read this."
Yeah.
Like, it's that meme of like.
I'm not going to read all this, but sorry that happened, or congratulations.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So she writes now that she has been a member of this church for 18 years. She has 5 kids. She raised those kids in this church. In fact, she wrote, it was, quote, rare for our family to miss services. She described herself as a Jesus fanatic, her words. She then adds that she posted her earlier message on Facebook because she was following what John Lindell, their pastor, has taught them, which is that if you have criticisms of church leaders and no one is listening, you're supposed to, quote, tell it to the church.
Yeah.
So that's what she was doing. And it looks like the church didn't appreciate that because now comes her like tell all. So she wrote now in the new block of text.
Okay.
That after her first Facebook post went up a month ago, she was contacted by Josh and Laura Longenecker, who are basically the pastor and pastor's wife, who are in charge of James River Church's North Campus. Because these mega churches have several smaller campuses. There's a different team that leads each of those churches. She belongs to one of them.
It's a network.
It's a network. So the franchise
Yeah.
managers contacted her, and she wrote, even though Laura had, quote, never spoken to me face-to-face or had a conversation with me, between April 20th and May 1st, Laura, quote, called, texted, or messaged me on Messenger, Facebook, a total of 16 times. And they eventually said, like, we should talk.
Girl,
should
be
talk.
cool.
Yeah. And they eventually, on May 1st of this month, they met in person. It was this woman who wrote this post and the husband and wife team running the franchise. And the husband, the pastor, Josh, he tells her, there have been some concerns brought to the church leadership. And he pulls up her post, which is now highlighted and annotated with his concerns. And he gives her an ultimatum, according to her.
Lady.
According to this woman, he gives her an ultimatum. Quote, Josh continued to state there are 2 major things here. The post is bringing disunity to the body of Christ. And if you are attending James River, our main leader and pastor is John Lindell, and we must submit to his leadership.
Oh, yikes.
Uh-huh.
Submit to him. I feel like I haven't heard that we have to submit to church leaders.
Like, not just respect our pastor, but like submit
to
woman.
him. But you said that he previously had said the other thing,
That
the opposite
if you have
thing.
issues with us, take it to us privately.
Is she
and
gonna
if no,
is she gonna escalate?
we'll get there.
Oh.
So, like, basically, they're saying by criticizing the church's leader, not only are you disobedient to our leader,
Yeah.
because this is a cult, damn it,
Yep.
but also you're harming Christianity.
That's a pretty heavy burden considering how
To a
many
random
Catholic
person.
priests have been like raping
Yeah.
children with impunity over the last several
Right,
centuries.
but she's the problem.
But she's the problem
Yeah.
for saying
So
like,
she-
hey, you guys have a lot of money, huh?
She responded that, hey, I don't worship men like
Yeah,
Lindell
girl.
or
Me
Mark
neither.
Driscoll. I worship Jesus.
We'll part ways, but I still like your enthusiasm.
But she told them, I'll think about what I wrote.
Yeah.
And, quote, if it is not aligning with biblical principles, I'll take it down. So she
Yeah.
goes home. She thinks about it. She's like,
Reads her Bible.
yeah, and she's like, no, I'm still good.
I'm good, actually.
Like,
I
why
think
would
my
she?
point
Because-
stands.
She felt it was fair criticism. And even better, she took notes during her meeting with the pastor and pastor's wife franchisee Burger King owners. And her notes are very much like corroborating everything she's now writing on Facebook. Like, it is a handwritten, she took notes on all of this. And that appeared to be the end of things.
I like this woman's chaotic energy. I really like that she's directing it at these people and is like, listen, this is my new calling.
We're only like 1,000 words into her block of text.
This woman clearly has nothing but energy and time and frustration.
With 5 kids.
And God bless her for still pursuing this. I'm sure her kids are grown, right? There's no way a human person with
I'll get to one of them in a second. Yeah. So a week, that appeared to be the end of things, May 1st.
Sure.
But then on May 11th, like over a week later, Josh, the pastor, again, of this campus says, we need to meet again.
What?
Here's the quote from her post. Josh stated that because you have not taken your post down, the executive leadership has recommended that you not attend services. Josh stated, I was given an order.
She's been shunned.
I was given an order from executive leadership, and I called to let you know it has been a week, and your post is still up. And she's like, you never told me to take it down. You told me to reflect on it, and I did, and I decided it was fine. But, like, you never told me to take it down. And this guy's like, yeah, but I winked at you when I said that. And how dare you not read between the lines?
In case anyone's wondering when a religion becomes a cult, it's about around here, Ski.
And then she goes on. She asked, well, can I speak with someone in executive leadership?
I love this woman.
No. And then she writes, I responded, well, I'm not a criminal. I don't have a warrant. I don't have a no trespassing notice provided. I have children who attend the service, and I've invited friends for Mother's Day as well, because Mother's Day was on a Sunday. She's like, I invited my friends to come to church with me on Sunday. I want to have an opportunity to discuss with my family these demands and allow ample time for our family to make a decision about what our next steps should be. So on Sunday, May 12th, the next day, she comes to church. Her children come to church because she has 5 of them. And they're there for the Mother's Day service, which she pointed out elsewhere in this post. Like, there are 3 services that are the highest attended: Christmas, Easter, and Mother's Day. And she's like, yeah,
what
this
else
is
would
a
you use
big
Christian
service.
guilt for?
Yeah. Oh, we'll get to that too.
Oh, God.
And she says, when I arrived at church, like, as soon as a church staffer spotted me, they asked me to get the hell out of there. And here's what she wrote. Justin Neal, who's the campus's head security team leader.
Okay.
All right. A few moments after he spotted her, began to walk towards me and approached me, placed his arm or hand on my back and cornered me to the signage, I don't know, and whispered in my ear, Rahela, you need to leave right now. ... She doesn't leave. Her 4-year-old son starts to cry.
4-year-old son?
And then he says to her again, I don't want to arrest you in front of your kids. You need to leave now. I stated, excuse me? Please tell me what this is about. He stated, you know what the executive leadership asked you to take your post down. Justin, pastor security dude, signaled 2 Greene County sheriffs to approach me, and at that time they asked for me to step outside the lobby to the parking lot to speak. She knew one of these guys, apparently.
This is the best gossip I've ever heard.
She asked one of the sheriffs, who she knows apparently.
Knows the sheriff.
Stan is his name. Stan stated, he knows who I am. He's been a friend to me for years. He knows my family. But Rahela, in quotes, I don't want to arrest you here. Like,
for what?
Basically saying, honey, just go home. I don't want to do this. So, I guess so. She says, is this not like a public church gathering here? He says, it's technically private property and the church has the right to ban members from not attending. So to summarize, this woman criticized church leadership. The church decides to banish her. She shows up to church anyway. How dare she? And then they called the cops to take her away, even if that meant arresting her in front of her kids, all on Mother's Day in church. And like, here's the thing. This is not a legal issue. They are a private organization. They do have the right to set their own membership rules.
Who cares about the law?
Yeah.
This is a shitty look, gang.
Yeah. It's the reason they're doing it, because someone dared to challenge, the leader.
Well, I'm glad we're boosting it now.
Yeah. So this is how cults operate. This is also how megachurches run by weak pastors with thin skin operate. So she finally says, all right, fine. I am going to leave. But the other church leaders tell her, yeah, but your older kids, they're cool. They can stay.
Oh, sure. They haven't had the audacity to complain.
So her oldest daughter, who I think is a teenager, she chimes in now. This is also in the block of text. My mom is the only parent in my life present. She is our mom. It's Mother's Day. She has taught us all faithfully about Jesus and church. How could you ask her to leave for not removing a post? But the church doors are open to drug addicts and alcohol addicts to come rehab and attend free living free classes.
You kind of overstepped your line there.
How can you ask us to attend, but not welcome my mother because of a public post she made with public information our pastor asked us to share? She writes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This woman goes on to say it's revealing that the church is using Mother's Day, by the way, their third most attended service. You know what they talked about that day in church?
Tell me. Forgiveness.
No.
Oh, bravery.
The importance,
standing up to authority.
The importance of tithing. And she writes.
Oh, boy. That's the worst thing they could have done.
She writes, do we all not know the principle of tithing, or was it to seize another opportunity to bank on the third largest attended service and prey on the emotions of families, mothers, visitors, and bring in the cash cow flow on Mother's Day? This is sickening.
Honestly, I just looked her up, and she has such a Karen energy, and I love when Karens use her energy for good. Because, listen, white lady rage is very real, and we need to channel it somewhere productive.
So over the next week, she tries repeatedly to get in touch with the church leaders over her banishment, but she keeps getting told by the firm, no one can talk to you because, quote, we are in budget season and it's all about the budget right now. Which,
sir, if you had listened to her complaints, maybe you could have said anything else.
This is a megachurch that has dozens, if not hundreds of staffers. And the idea that every single one of them is too busy working on the money and we can't deal with members.
But meanwhile, definitely her picture is posted all over the place because they snapped her up as soon as she walked in.
Top 10 most wanted in the church walls. Yeah.
Do you think we can make that wall?
We should. Put me up there.
What state is this?
Missouri. So
Drivable.
Apparently handling money is an all hands on
pretty.
handling money is an all hands on deck sort of issue. But
well,
and it's apparently a higher
because you can't trust any other Christians, I guess.
It's apparently a higher priority than letting a longtime church member speak with someone in church leadership.
It's so
and by the way,
cowardly.
Same woman says, I have recordings of every one of these discussions.
Yeah, you do, girl.
She said she plans to post them on YouTube very soon so we can all hear them. As far as I could tell, she hasn't posted them yet.
She's nothing but not diligent, our girl.
I reached out to her in multiple ways. She did not respond to me. But she did post all this stuff online. And she wrote at the end of her post, all 4,000 some words, to my dear, dear James River friends, know that I did not abandon you. I did not leave you. I did not ignore you. My door is open. My home is open. And she's still a Christian. But also, if you want to know why she's not there anymore, this is why.
Truly, this is one of the best stories you've ever brought. What an outstanding story.
And if you read through the comments under the block of text, if you skip the ones that say, girl, can you please write in paragraphs? There are ones that say, we will never return to James River Church after this situation. Another one, this is sickening and disheartening. I occasionally go to James River, but can no longer support them.
On Mother's Day and Christmas.
I made the decision to attend elsewhere shortly after that Wednesday service after some things were brought to light.
Wednesday service?
The service where they kicked her, the John Lindell.
Day.
The Lindell service
where
he, quote unquote, didn't apologize. Another person said, people would often compare James River Church to a cult. I never believed them, always stood by my church. But this entire situation has done nothing but scream cult. And I believe your story further shows that.
Hey guys, the Raptors are testing the perimeter. They're going to break out soon.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum on
Another person said, I've been going there for 5 years, barely missed a week. My boys love it there. I've been involved on and off serving before. The men's conference made me sick, and I can't get over it. I tried another church over the last couple of weeks, but I'm still having to let go where I thought home church was.
Wow.
After reading this, no way I can keep going back.
So even just the Lindell, what's his face, tiff, ruffled a lot of feathers.
And then the way they're handling
and their
a woman who
mishandling of
criticized
it
her.
is.
I did reach out to the church just to see if anyone has a response to anything.
Haven't. They told you they're busy with budget.
It's
budget.
They didn't even send me a form letter saying, buddy, it's budget season. I wanted that at least.
Yeah,
They
that'd
didn't
been
respond
great.
either.
Don't you know that
I
May
went through
is the classic budget season because all years end on, well, I guess if
I
this is
went
the end
through
of
the
their
contact
fiscal
form
year.
on their website like they told me nothing.
Wow. And you even had friendly atheists right in your email address. I can't believe that didn't work.
I used my secret one.
That says Bob, like your coffee order.
Damn right.
All right, let's do more of these things.
You get 2.
2? Okay.
We'll get to more later.
God, Facebook is a terrible app, eh? Okay, I couldn't even, this is from Tiff. I couldn't even tell you when I found this podcast, but I feel like you've always been in my listening queue. I was raised by funny parents, but even as a pre-K kid, I had questions about the church that nobody could satisfy. I grew up as a lonely skeptic with no autonomy in a crowd of the ultra-devout. Y'all have made it so much easier for me to become comfortable in my atheism and to be open about it, especially Jessica with her bombastic loudness. Her laugh and her delivery of the word what, do I say what weird?
Yes.
Oh, is what really hooked me. And Hammett, with his curmudgeonly view of everyone and everything, along with his disinterest in watching things that bring me a familiar. Sorry, I had to restart this sentence. It's very good. Hammett, with his curmudgeonly view of everything and everyone, along with his disinterest in watching things, brings me a familiar antisocial comfort. You guys got me through the 2020 election, and I still have never forgotten sharing solidarity with Jess during the Rover throw. That's pretty funny. And how supportive Hammett was while she said what we were all thinking. I've been a patron for a while now, and I'm happy to support this show and both of you. Happy 10 years, everybody.
Aw, thank
P.S.
you.
I love the year-end recaps. They could be 5 hours long and still listen. Hammett always tries to place the timer on those, and I'm like, no. The people want what they want. And then from Madison, for the record, my husband and I have added Cuckoo Bananas Crazy Pants to our lexicon thanks to Jess, and we have 0 regrets. Comes in handy surprisingly often, which I returned a message because that is me. It's a malapropism of a quote from Community, which is Crazy Town Banana Pants, which I think is funnier, but I can't get it to stick in my head, so I say Cuckoo Bananas Crazy Pants.
I like that too.
Thank you.
All right. Let me get to a story in Alabama. A public school in Alabama invited a preacher to speak to students about Jesus and lead them in prayer. And you know how I know that?
Because it's a public school?
Because the preacher bragged about it online.
Oh, brother.
Because that's what they do. This is at Stanhope Elmore High School. It's part of the Elmore County Schools District. And basically, in mid-April...
rural... Urban,
I'm not
do you know?
sure.
Okay.
But a guy named John Eklund, he was the speaker at what is supposedly a mandatory assembly that students were told they had to go to because it's going to address mental health. And the reason this guy was speaking there, Eklund, is because I guess he is a licensed clinical social worker, which, okay, fine, so are many people. So what's unique about him? I don't know. He could have spoken to students about how to deal with mental health struggles in a way that is universal. Instead, he allegedly used the opportunity to proselytize and lead students in group prayer. And it seems
That's how priests do.
It's not that he was going rogue because maybe he said to the school, this is what I'm going to say, and then he did something different. But it seems like the school was well aware of what he was going to do because this is what Eklund posted on Facebook on April 12th. He was speaking about the Principal Ewell Fuller. I told Principal Fuller at Stanhope Elmore High School that I was amazed at his willingness to let us come in and talk about Jesus and recovery in a large public high school. His response, I've been doing this for 26 years. If I'm going to get in trouble, it might as well be for Jesus. Which
I hate these people so fucking
feel
much.
like you're bragging about the arson
These
you just
fucking
committed.
people who... Just these people who brag about not having to follow the rules is genuinely the most Christian and white thing of all time. It's like, hey, everybody, I'm flagrantly going to disobey the rules and then act persecuted.
It's what's going on with like Alito this week with his Christian flag and insurrection flags hanging up at his house. It's like you're supposed to at least pretend to be impartial. And you're so not doing that.
That made me so mad. I think I need a minute to just sit here quietly and absorb that. You talk now.
Yeah. And so this guy is like, all you have to do is you got away with it. Now shut up and you get to get away with it. And he's like, no, I'm so proud of how I broke the rules and the principal gave me permission to do it. Let me put his name and the school's name in a public post on
like
Facebook.
Tagged them or just use their name?
Use their names.
Wow.
And So, like, why did they invite this guy? Even though he is a licensed, whatever he is, therapist, like, so are other people. What's special about this guy? His claim to fame is his Christian ministry, which is called Recovery Alive, which functions as like a 12-step program to help people recover from basically everything.
Sure.
I looked at the website.
Gay,
like, what is
porn,
this? Yeah.
weed.
The website doesn't specify what they help you with.
Bud
They just
Light.
say, we'll help you recover,
But
period.
like lime.
Everything, yeah. It does say on the website, Recovery Alive prioritizes the power of Jesus through the Holy Spirit to raise hope from the dead, which is creepy and also doesn't say anything that you do.
I feel like we should yell death at children less.
That's like some company saying, we're going to take advantage of this paradigm shift and help you achieve the most. It's like, what do you do? I don't know.
It really,
But in no sane world is Jesus a solution to very real problems students are facing. And like religion might be a way for some students to cope with their problems, but it's definitely not the way for all students to deal with them. And the thing is, this wasn't the only school he went to, because a day earlier, he appeared at a different high school in the exact same district to give a similar talk. You know how I know that?
bragged about that too.
Because the high school bragged about that on Facebook. Thank you to John Eklund, founder and CEO of Recovery Alive, for speaking to our students today during our assembly. So, like, they didn't say he spoke about religion, but he was there, and they bragged about that.
This is stupid. I hate it.
But that first post I made where the dude thanked the principal and the second high school, you know what else he wrote in that post?
Tell me.
This morning, during 2 assemblies, so this other one,
With school?
hundreds of teenagers flooded the court, like in the gym, to receive prayer for struggles of value and worth. So he's saying,
Yeah,
I went
the
to
one
both
thing about
schools.
teenagers is they're not easily manipulated.
Yeah, so now the Freedom from Religion has written a letter to the district, and they say we're writing this on behalf of multiple parents who spoke with us. And no surprise here, it is unconstitutional to take away instructional time from students to expose them to religious proselytizing.
Correct.
It is an unacceptable intrusion for outside speakers to be allowed to voice their religion. The principal is heavily complicit in this. And they're saying the principal, who was in that first post from Eklund, he should be reprimanded, and additional training should be provided for staff members who allowed this violation of students to take place. So this week, the district responded to FFRF. And basically, and this kind of surprised me, they just denied everything.
Oh.
The superintendent,
What?
Richard Dennis, he says the assembly was not religious and it was not mandatory. And he said only one student filed a complaint with us because they didn't know the assembly was optional, and that the district has taken measures to prevent any similar concern in the future. And
We only
FFRF,
got one complaint from a kid.
because kids file complaints
All
about
the
this.
time.
FFRF is like, we see the Facebook posts. Like, the dude himself
This
is saying,
gaslighting
you guys,
is
look what this principal
insanity.
let me do.
Is it gaslighting or is it just disassociation?
Don't know. Not a licensed therapist.
This guy is, though.
Yeah. FFRF said in response, like, FFRF's complainants, including 2 parents, reported that during the assembly, Eklund told students that Jesus Christ set him on his path of redemption and he will save them too. And then he
That's
offered...
not religious. It's just about Jesus Christ and redemption.
Well, then Eklund reportedly offered students money to come down and be prayed over.
Go fuck yourself. You're lying to me.
And he also reportedly...
What does that mean?
I don't know. And then he reportedly told students to attend church and passed out pamphlets advertising one particular church.
Oh, really? That's so shocking.
So this idea
And
that,
do you
like,
think their next thing is going to be about tithing?
like, what can you do at this point? Because the district's like, didn't happen. Prove it. And we're like, the Facebook post, it's right there. They're
Well-
like, we didn't post that. I don't know what you're talking about.
So okay,
what-
this feels like a new thing of just a complete denial.
No, it does happen often.
Does it?
Sometimes FFRF says, this happened. We've talked to people who said this happened.
Yeah.
And the school says, it
No.
didn't. And like, the thing is, there's not much you can do at that point. Because if the school's saying didn't happen, what more can you do if you don't have like more solid than Facebook? You can't really go to court over a Facebook post
But
or something
can't you
like
go
that.
like if students and teachers complained, they're real humans that
It's a
can
hard
be interviewed.
situation.
Is it? Because it does
FFRF
not sound hard. It sounds really fucking easy.
FFRF says
How
it'll
much do
monitor.
they pay this D-bag?
I don't know. That's a public record, which I'm sure FFRF can find if they wanted to. But all they can
that's the
do
other
is
question.
monitor the situation. But the fact that students had to sit through that garbage, while religion often contributes to mental health problems, is just unfair to those kids in addition to being illegal. Like, there's no shortage of actual experts in mental health. Why not go to any of them?
Truly.
Why pick this guy whose main goal is stated to spread the gospel instead of actually helping people? I don't get it.
It's disappointing, to say the least. All right, this is from Tracy. I've been a listener for less than a year, and I can't remember quite how I found the show, but it's one of my favorites. I look forward to listening to every episode. Jessica's a surrogate for my reactions to the news stories presented by Hemet. My reactions are often the same as I hear on the pod. I reviewed for Apple and recommended to many friends. My review was read on the pod, and it cracked me up because Jessica was trying to figure out my name as it shows up as something. She declared it must be check name or something. No, it's just a combo of name and initials. I was trying to be helpful. And then from Mark, I was searching on iTunes for podcast content that I might be interested in about 9 months ago, and I've been hooked on the show ever since. Now I'm catching up on past episodes. Oof. You two have a wonderful and interesting contrast that really makes the show work well.
Oh, thank you.
That's very nice.
Let me get to a different story that I've only seen on right-wing websites, and I think it's going to be on more by the time this airs.
Okay.
But it's only seen on right-wing websites. It's a story I covered last year. We talked about it when it happened, so I won't go over every detail.
Okay.
I do want to tell you the update, though. Basically, I'll try to shorten this as much as I can. Republican leaders in the House are literally putting atheist lives in danger. And why are they doing it?
I remember this,
I think
yeah.
it's because they just want to get their base excited with some stupid culture war issue before the elections. And the story we talked about, I think it was last August, that was the first time I saw them actively making everything worse because they revealed information they were not supposed to do.
Yeah,
and
I
now they're
remember that.
basically making things worse again.
Oh, good.
Now they're saying the State Department, the Biden-run U.S. State Department, sought to promote atheism overseas under the guise of religious freedom. And now they have like accusations to go, like specific complaints. And here's the backstory so you can make sense of this. In April of 2021, the State Department has a Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor division of the State Department. And one of their jobs is to promote religious freedom worldwide. Because as a democracy, we want to help other countries have a democracy that includes having religious freedom. So if there is a country in the world where religious freedom is being suppressed, our country thinks it's a good idea to help religious minorities or non-religious minorities spread freedom of religion.
Okay.
And to help them any way we can, legally speaking, because this is ultimately good for democracy and the values our country promotes.
Okay.
That's the principle behind all of this. So what they do is they say, we are offering X amount of dollars to do the following thing that we think is important.
Okay.
For example, there are Muslims in this country who are like under a Christian regime, or vice versa. There are Christians in this Muslim country who are being suppressed. We want to use our taxpayer dollars to help those religious minorities, not to promote their religion, but because maybe they need a way to network with each other because they want to help each other. And we do this all the time. This has been happening for a long, long time. So in April of 2021, they put up a specific grant saying we're offering 1 to 2 grants for up to $500,000 to help support religious freedom globally. But specifically, we want to help people basically branded as apostates in South or Central Asia, Middle East, North Africa, in those areas of the world. So what could you do with that money? In theory, they actually listed examples of what they were looking for: legal rights advocacy, journalism to promote dialogue between religious or non-religious groups, increasing the capacity to document abuses of religious freedom. Notice, I did not say they're interested in promoting atheism.
No.
They're not doing like new atheist propaganda.
Right.
They're saying there are atheists in this part of the world who are in danger. Let us help them like talk to each other, document abuses so that we can help, we could do something about this. I think that's a wonderful use
Yeah.
of our taxpayer dollars. This is about helping atheists who may face obstacles, okay? So basically, all of this was explained very thoroughly, what they were trying to do, who they were trying to help. And then it's open. People can apply for that money by saying, hey, this is what we want to do if we had the money to do it. And that was the last I heard of it for a while. Like, I didn't know who got the money.
Yeah.
Right? And so cutting to a long time after that, let's get to like June of 2022. Jim Banks, who is a congressperson from Indiana, he basically announced that this had happened. He had ignored it for like a year. Like, this is over a year later. He puts out a press release saying, I just discovered that the State Department is trying to, quote, promote atheism worldwide.
Jesus Christ.
And he's
these
like, I
fucking
wrote a
people.
letter to President Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken and me and 14 other Republicans in Congress.
Oh, 14?
Say the government is working to empower atheists. And we know what that means. And he wrote,
means that you and I can make a living doing this job.
We are writing to express our grave concern that the State Department is using appropriated funds to support atheism. Like, how dare you do that? That violates our Constitution. And you know Republicans and how much they love the Constitution. And so this goes on for a while. Like, he says, you would never do this for, like, Christians in China. That would never happen.
It's literally what it's for.
It is literally what it's for. And guess what? They actually have put in grants to help Christians in China.
Yeah, dog.
So, like, all of this is BS.
And this is so Trumpian of like, I just learned about this. Everybody's talking about this all of a sudden. Like, sir, your experience is not universal.
I personally found grant proposals, like, where they put up the page saying, if you want to apply, and it was to promote religious freedom in Afghanistan, to help Shia Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Hindus, and others in certain parts of the world. There was one promoting expanding religious tolerance in Mozambique, and specifically among Christians who are oppressed there. There was another one to support religious equality in Bangladesh because their government sometimes fails to hold accountable the perpetrators of mob violence against minority Hindu, Christian, Ahmadi, and humanist communities. Like, they have done this for a lot of places, but what was Banks trying to do? He cherry-picked one proposal, said, we're trying to give money to atheists. He claimed this is government endorsement of atheism, which it was not. Why did he do it? Because he wanted headlines. And guess what? He got those headlines.
Where is he from?
That guy was from Indiana, but plenty of Republicans are on board
you don't
with this.
say. A Republican from Indiana is a giant D-bag? I can't believe it.
And so the thing is, I'm skipping over a lot of details
Hashtag every
here,
out to college with.
but his letter, paraphrased, like, he wanted some answers. And I wanted those answers too, which is, who got the money? How much did they get? What were the groups going to do with that money? I think those are good questions. Now, as far as I could tell, they could not get answers from the State Department. And for what it's worth, when I tried to get answers through different sources, I couldn't get answers either. And there's a reason for that. Because let's say you're an organization in maybe Nepal and you got money to help atheists do this thing. Secrecy matters.
Okay.
Because the whole thing is you are being targeted because of your atheism. So if you're doing a project to help those people, you can't let it be known, hey, everybody, they're having a meeting in Jess's house.
Yeah, right.
To figure this out. They needed it to be under wraps.
Yeah.
And that's why the State Department wasn't saying anything either. At least they shouldn't make it public until after everything is done.
Right.
Then, of course, it should be publicized because people deserve to know where their tax dollars are going. So this goes on. 2 months later, Jim Banks, Indiana, sends another letter. We still don't know anything. Hey, State Department, preserve all your documents. So we cut
I
to...
think they do that
They do
anyway,
that
dog.
Right.
I think
it's not like they
legal.
were burning up the grant applications.
Jesus Christ, this guy
So-
thinks he's fucking James Bond, and I hate him.
Cut to February of 2023, over a year ago. Now, the House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman, Mike McCall, he enters the picture. This is a Republican from Texas. He writes his own letter to the State Department, gives it to some...
I'm mad too.
Yes, and sends it to some right-wing propaganda outlets.
Obviously.
He says
Me and
basically...
Breitbart are so mad.
He says, I do not take lightly the plight that some non-believers face in coercive environments.
I bet you do take it pretty lightly.
But also you're promoting a specific secular agenda. I have no choice but to assume those groups are not receiving the same... Oh, he's talking about Christians oppressed in other parts of the world. I have no choice but to assume those groups are not receiving the same privileged attention and funding as atheists.
What?
Because you know who has it good in this world? Atheists.
Wait, what is he talking? Like, all of this shit is verifiable. You can't just... He can just say things. What is he... Mm-hmm.
He's basically saying there are oppressed religious groups around the world, but you're treating atheists better than all of them.
That is nothing.
That's not true.
That's a nothing
As I've explained,
statement.
like they do grants
And also,
for religious
I have
minorities.
no choice but to assume. Are you sure you don't have a choice?
Yeah.
Because there's other
You
things
could-
you can do by assume. You could research.
You could walk across the street, probably.
Yeah, you could
and just ask and
just like-
point to your badge and say, "I'm a congressman. I
Will you
need
tell
some
me this,
information."
please?
Right. So
These
whoever
fucking
wrote
people.
his letter,
It's so aren't
they
you
had-
fucking disgusted by these people just baldly lying?
Yeah. So whoever wrote this letter, whether it's this guy or his staffers, they had no knowledge of what the program was or how it worked or what the broader goal was, but they wanted all these specific answers, even though publicizing those answers could literally put people in harm's way. Mm-hmm. And Jim Banks, the guy who started this whole kerfuffle, he was like, I thank my colleague over here for taking up the investigation. The House Republican majority will not tolerate the unconstitutional and harmful funding of atheism abroad.
Truly, I just want to circle back to talking about what Democrats have done in Minnesota and in Illinois and what their goals are, which is to make sure people can afford to live near where they work. And, you know, if they don't want to be pregnant, they don't have to be. And these people are just bullying strangers because they are atheists.
Yep.
Like, they are just using us, people like us, as target practice because we're an easy, like, you say atheist and everyone's like, whoa. It's so embarrassing and it's so transparent.
So when these Republican leaders of committees say, hey, State Department, we need answers to stuff, the State Department does have to respond to that stuff. And this is when we talked about this last year, because it turns out the State Department did respond to the letter and did answer the questions for the committee. And then when we talked about this last August, this Texas representative, McCall, who's the committee chair, and two other Republicans, Chris Smith and Brian Mast, they first were like, the State Department's stonewalling us. We want answers. And they wrote a letter saying, you're not giving us all the answers we want. But in their letter, this is what made me furious when we talked about this last time, they revealed, you told us the money went here, but you didn't tell us specifics that we wanted to know. And they said out loud that you gave at least one organization money from the State Department, and it's Humanists International. And that is a global organization that works to help this type of
Non-religious
injustice.
people.
Yeah. And a footnote said, the Humanists International's application said, we will use our existing structures for dissemination and monitoring of grants to make available 2 subgrants to member organizations in Sri Lanka and Nepal. Basically, Humanists International filed their application, and they said, we need X amount of dollars from the State Department. I don't know if they got all 500,000 or some amount of that, but they said, we already have a lot of groups in place. We have groups in Sri Lanka and Nepal, specifically places you want to look at. We will use our existing structures to oversee what they're doing. We will give the grant money you give us, we're going to give it to them to do the following things. That's what they wrote in their application. And then they got that money. And now the question is okay, well, now we want oversight. Make sure they're doing what it is they're supposed to do. But in this Republican letter last August, this guy was still saying, you gave it to a group that exists, Humanists International. You gave it to them even though their website says they are interested in promoting humanism. Which is yeah, you give it to Christian nonprofits too, even though they might say, we are here to spread the gospel message, but also we feed the hungry, and you're giving us money to feed the hungry. That's fine. That's not a problem, but these guys
people
are ratcheting it up.
Monsters.
Yeah.
They're absolute fucking monsters.
They are. McCall pointed out last August that Humanists International works closely with the American Humanist Association, a group that fights for church-state separation in a number of legal battles in this country. That, he said, should be of grave concern to the department.
Fuck yourself, dude.
Yes.
How do you not understand how your own fucking country works? You're running it.
So I didn't get, why are you telling people that the money went to
no
Sri
more
Lanka?
white men in Congress.
Why did
I'm
you-
Jessica, and I'm running for president. No
Yes.
more white guys anywhere.
I was appalled that why did these idiot Republicans reveal that the money went to groups in
'Cause
Sri
they
Lanka
don't
and
care,
Nepal,
or they
right?
don't know.
Where, by the way, in those countries, blasphemy is punishable with a prison sentence. That's one thing. Religious instruction is mandatory in schools. There are very few safe spaces for non-religious people to interact, much less discuss anything. So the fact that Humanists International said, we want to help you, that's a risky endeavor. It requires careful planning. And these morons were just blabbing it out to the world. So that brings me, I haven't talked about this since last August. So what's happening this week? And it actually just happened today and yesterday as we are recording this, because they've been quiet ever since. And
They being the
the
congressman or
Republicans,
the okay.
they haven't really said much. But yesterday, Wednesday, McCall, Mast, and Smith, those three Republicans, sent another to the State Department demanding more answers. They sent it specifically to Deputy Secretary of State Richard Verma. And basically they said, listen, you've been responding to all of our letters, but we're not happy with your answers. And they had some subcommittee hearings, and State Department officials testified at those hearings. They never make the news because they're generally boring, but they appeared at them, and they answered the questions, and they're like, we don't like your answers. And also they said, we got you. We caught you doing something wrong. Here's what they said in this week. They said, first of all, they referred to the State Department's, quote, new atheism innovation.
Jesus Christ.
And the
these
Republicans say
fucking
these
people.
funds were, quote, used to support, oh, I'm sorry, you lied to us when you said you're trying to support religious freedom globally. And they said you're now engaging in obfuscation and denial. And specifically, they also said, you told us earlier this year that you are deeply concerned with the programming and that you would pursue appropriate accountability measures. But we don't know that you're doing it. They're basically saying, you have a problem with this too. You told us you have a problem with it, but you're not doing enough. The State Department, the guy from the State Department showed up to one of these subcommittee hearings, and they asked him about all this. And he said, Mr. Chairman, I have actually looked at this. I looked at the grant. I've looked at the materials. This accusation that it's about atheism, that's not what the grant is for. That's not what the work would be for. And frankly, we would never authorize such a grant to any organization to promote any kind of religion. ... Governments across the world, as you know, are cracking down, can torture people, lock people up for their religious belief. And in this letter this week, the Republican said that was a lie because lawyers for the group that got the money, they uncovered, I'm quoting, they uncovered in a matter of weeks what the department obfuscated, misrepresented, and denied for years.
This guy needs a thesaurus.
I know. So what did the humanists uncover
Tell me. I
that the
don't care.
Republicans are now treating as a big story? Well, according to the Republicans, they say, you sent us, State Department, when we asked you for information, you said these are the training slides that the humanists are using to do their work in these two countries. Well, according to the humanists group, their lawyer, he said, oh, those are not the slides we ended up using. These are the slides we ended up using. And I don't know what the difference is between version 1.0 and version 2.0, but the Republicans say the differences are damning.
Let's see. Let's hear him.
I would love to tell you what the differences are.
They didn't tell us.
They didn't tell us.
Oh, but they're damning. So
But
we just have to
they're damning.
we have to take their word
Yeah.
for it because they've definitely earned our trust.
So what damning information
By
did these
obfuscating and
Republicans...
denying.
What damning information did the Republicans
Obfuscation and
uncover?
denialism?
What proof do they have that the actual training slides
Deny
were
and obfuscate.
used to turn people into atheists? What evidence is there that the funds that were given were not being used as intended?
Haven't.
I would love to
Obfuscation
tell
and
you.
denialism.
I would love to tell you, but the Republicans didn't show anything.
They don't show their
There's
work.
nothing in the letter.
Trust them.
They're acting like
Pay
they
no attention to the man behind the curtains.
They're acting like they spiked the football. They fumbled in the end zone. And again,
They didn't even fumble it in the end
Before
zone.
the
They
end
missed
zone.
the punt.
They missed the punt. Like, if they just said, here's what we know you are doing, like, fine. But, like, I can't tell from reading the letter if there was, like, a typing error, a typo somewhere, and they're like, oh, this is the actual set of slides. And they're like, oh, there's a difference between what the State Department gave us and what they actually did, and trying to blow that up. Or what? Like, what did these groups do that these people are picking at?
Also,
I don't know.
These guys need to clean up their own yard before they come for any of us.
This is very much like the, James Comer's attempt to impeach Biden. They already decided what the conclusion should be, and everyone's like, well, what's your evidence that he did something wrong? He's like, we're working on it.
Well,
Stop asking me questions.
Excuse me, that's their entire faith is trust me, dude.
And that's what these guys are doing now, too. They're like, oh, we said you were promoting atheism. You said you weren't. But we saw the slides, and it's clear you are promoting
But we can't
atheism.
show anybody because your
you.
eyes will fall out because there's an upside-down cross and a pentagram, obfuscation and denialism.
So why are these Republicans doing it? Because they want headlines that say something like Biden administration, atheism grant, things like that. And guess what? They got that because yesterday when I looked this up, the headline said, this is from Real Clear Politics, a right-wing website, State Department, atheism grant, in quotes, may have been misused. From the New York Post, right wing. State Department accused of using taxpayer money to promote atheism. None of these says evidence.
None of them are true.
None of them are true.
And also, like, so fucking
It's
what?
just, they're accused because Republicans can accuse people of anything
I've been accused
want.
of all kinds of things, Lord knows.
Right, but unlike the accusations against you, these are false. So, like, there's smoke, there's no fire. And given how these Republicans have already spilled the beans...
There isn't smoke. They're using a bubble blower to make it.
That's even better. Yeah. Like
they got a smoke machine, and they're like, oh, look at all this smoke. There must be a fire. And then you just pull the plug, and it's like, oh, this is nothing.
Yeah. And I know this is a long, wound-up story for something that seems anticlimactic, but I'm saying, like, the State Department...
mad now.
The State Department is not promoting atheism. I say this as an atheist who works with groups that work with government organizations. Like, I promise you, the government is not our buddy.
Yeah.
They're not giving us money for this stuff. But atheists in certain parts of the world really are persecuted for their non-belief. Just like religious minorities, including Christians, including Muslims in other parts of the world. And our country has decided, for good reason, we have an obligation to help them to the best of our abilities. Not to promote their religious views or non-religious views, but to promote religious freedom and freedom of thought because we think that's in the best interest of our values. And for Republicans to act like this program is broken because, atheists got the same type of grant that several religious groups have received, by the way, in far greater amounts.
Of course.
That is nothing more than an attempt to stir up conservatives who are never going to pay attention to the details and possibly end a program that has done so much to help religiously persecuted minorities in other parts of the world.
They don't care as long as they're right.
They don't care. They're just trying to get the headlines. And my hope, I guess, at this point is that, one, they shut up. They're not going to. But two, that this what happens last August happens now, too, which is like it gets their day of headlines and then no one does anything with it. That might be the best thing that could happen.
Yeah.
I would like to know what the differences are since the State Department is talking about it, but they haven't. I put in a FOIA request years ago. They still haven't responded to that. I'm not expecting anything. But, like, yeah, fine. I want to know what the differences are so I can do more. I don't know.
This is really a bummer. And I see that Scotland is our last topic, and the only reason I'm allowing us to move forward is Scotland's my favorite country.
All right.
I'm so tired and
It's a
so
quick
sweaty.
story,
It's so
and
fucking
it's a
hot
good
in this
news.
house right now.
Sure. One bit of good news to end this.
Oh,
which
wait,
is,
hold on. I have to read things.
Fine, read a
God
thing.
damn it. Okay, this one is from... Why does my app close every time I put it down? I want to go back to where I was. Okay, we have... Sorry, Del, we did. Tracy, we did. Mark, I was... Nope, we did that. Liza, I was
the
at the beginning.
preparation that everyone loves.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I just thought if I put my phone down and then I picked it back up, it would be the same thing as when I put it down, but that's not how the world works. Madison, did I find my soulmate by listening to the show? Kinda. My husband and I met by both being in our college's Secular Student Alliance. He'd give me rides home after the meeting. Never would have met him otherwise. Friendly Atheist is one of the shows other folks in the SSA often listen to, and they got us both listening too. With both of us being raised in church, him very much so, 7 generations of pastors, and his family still runs a small church. We connected by talking about atheist stuff that we could only talk to each other about. Stuff like the kinds of stories y'all cover and how crazy and isolating it can be to be surrounded by folks who are deep into it while we're still on the outside. So kinda met in 2018. 6 years later, we're married with a toddler. I'm still listening to Friendly Atheist every week. It's a weekly dose of hanging out with people who are on the same wavelength as us, and it helps keep me sane. Happy 10 years and cheers to many more.
What's the baby's name? I gotta know. It better be named after us.
It has to be Hemmant Jessica.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what else maybe Jessica Hemmant.
I will accept middle names.
Do you have a middle name?
I do.
What is it?
You want my social security number?
A middle name is not the same thing.
It is a podcast.
You're dumb. You're just embarrassed to be Indian. I don't know. Angie. Oh, hi, Angie. I think I started listening in 2016, so I only missed about 2 years. My friend told me about it, but it's been a huge part of my deconversion, along with a thinking atheist, straight white American Jesus, blasphemy in the bluegrass, and others. Thank you for your years of laugh, information, and perspectives. Angie came on a architecture tour in Louisville on my birthday this past year.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Last story here. It's some good news. Scotland just released the results from its 2022 census.
Oh.
Took a while to get the results.
No kidding.
But they just got released, and for the
That's
first time...
That's when they say the most recent data we have available.
Yes. And for the first time ever, a majority of citizens, 51.1%, have no religious affiliation.
Hey!
10 years ago, when they did the last census, it was 36.7. So, like,
holy shit!
That number jumped up.
Call that precipitous.
Specifically, if you want raw numbers,
I do.
2,780,900 people said they have no religion out of basically 5.4 million Scottish people. So very interesting. And that rise coincides with a massive drop in membership for the Presbyterian affiliated Church of Scotland, which in 2022, only 20.4% of people say they're members of the Church of Scotland. That's down from 32.4 10 years ago.
Do you know the story behind the National Church of Scotland? I'm wondering if it was like a British sort of import, and they're like, fuck you guys, though.
Don't know, and it's becoming more relevant by the day, apparently.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And not only did no religion rise throughout Scotland, it rose throughout every part of their 32 breakdown council areas with
counties or whatever?
States. With only 2 exceptions, the Western Isles and Inverclyde, where Church of Scotland and Roman Catholic were the 2 popular labels. But basically, the other things they pointed out, among the non-religious, men and women are mostly balanced. It's 53% men.
That's interesting.
Which I was surprised by. Every single age group saw a rise in the nuns. And maybe this was shocking. When you looked at people under the age of 24, over 62% of them had no religious affiliation, which means the dramatic rise isn't just young people abandoning religion while older people kind of stay put.
It really isn't.
Every group is ditching that sinking ship.
I guess I don't know a ton about the sort of religious history of Scotland. Obviously Catholicism and being Irish are very much intertwined, and I'm not sure that the Scottish necessarily have that one state, one religion thing. So I guess that tracks with me, right? Because I think there's a Catholic population in Scotland as well.
No clue, and it's all not mattering as much, apparently.
Yeah, that's fair.
A couple of caveats, though. I think all of this is an underestimate. And the reason is, one, this question about religious label, it was optional, and apparently 6% of people didn't answer it. And you have to wonder, why didn't they answer it? Is it because they are no longer religious, but they didn't want to write that down because that makes it true? You know what I mean? They felt ashamed, maybe. So that's possible. But the other thing, and the more important thing, is look at how they asked the question. The question on the census was, what religion, religious denomination, or body do you belong to? Which assumes you have one.
Was there not none as an option?
At the bottom, it's other, or none, no religion. But the question is, what religion do you belong to? What they should do if they wanted an accurate answer would be something like, are you religious? If so, what is your religious label? And let's see how many people say no to part 1. That would get you a more accurate answer.
Yeah.
But by saying, what is your religion?
Right.
And counting on up the people who said none or no religion, that gets you a lower count.
That's a good point.
The fact that it's a lower count and it's over 50%, that's wild.
Yeah.
So Humanist UK pointed out the growth of the non-religious population is the biggest demographic change in the UK today.
Wow.
And yet the UK remains a very religious state, including in it. And they said this is looking at
legally
Scotland,
speaking.
but it's also true in England and Wales. He said the UK remains a very religious state, including in its institutions that every country is subjected to. We still have daily prayers in the UK Parliament, with those who attend more able to get seats and participate in subsequent debates. We still have bishops in the House of Lords. We still have compulsory school prayers. And we still have schools that divide children based on religion. So basically saying, if all of us are ditching organized religion, why do these religious institutions have so much power, which is an ongoing battle that they've had to deal with?
Are they calling for a merger between the Protestant and the Catholic Church? Because I feel like
they may have to team up like they do.
There's 1,000 years or so of bad blood between those two particular groups.
Yeah, but if no one likes you, you might as well team up.
Yeah, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. The Church of Scotland responded by saying, basically, well, they said, it's an area of concern, but here's how they put it. This is the Reverend David Cameron. I don't know his position, but he's part of the Church of Scotland. It is sobering. And we know that when the church is measured in this way, with like data,
Sure.
it can feel hurtful for our members and be a source of anxiety for many. But
Why would you have anxiety that people are leaving your religion?
because you realize no one likes you. But, he said, our faith and our relevancy cannot be expressed simply as a set of numbers.
Relevancy? Relevance.
Like,
it doesn't
whatever.
matter. I'm sorry.
But the idea that, like, no, I mean, your relevancy is very much tied to how many people say, I want to be part of your club.
Yeah,
And if everyone's
you can't
leaving.
measure vibes as much as we've tried.
Right. And he's very much like, yeah, our vibes are good.
Yeah, like everybody's smiling when they see me, so I don't know why people are unhappy.
One of the things some UK people pointed out is that, the politicians are not, the people are more attuned to the religious changes than the politicians. In 2011, then Prime Minister David Cameron gave a speech where he said, we are a Christian country and we should not be afraid to say so. Well, he was wrong then. He's really wrong now.
Well, he's not wrong. It's a legally Christian country. Just the population doesn't support it, and that should be a little more alarming to him than just being like, no.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say the UK's present day is Christian in any meaningful way, no, it's not.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I would
fine.
argue it's
If
much
you
less
want to say
religious than
it
the United
used
States.
to be, but now we know better. Okay, now you're getting closer.
Yeah.
But some good news out of Scotland there.
Interesting.
And exactly what people predicted too. By the way, I think a few years ago, we learned, this was in 2012.
Jesus
we already
Christ.
learned that more than half of all marriages in Scotland, 52%, were done through civil ceremonies
Wow.
rather than through traditional religion.
Do you have any other country data on that? That's I don't.
no.
Without context, I don't know if that's a lot or a little.
It was 31% in 1971,
Oh.
which is high. But
Yeah.
like in 1971, like a third of people went to the courthouse to get married.
Wow.
And now it's 52%. That was in 2012. And now, I mean, as more people are non-religious, and you're like, oh, that's not so weird after all to just
Yeah.
have a judge or a friend, I don't know what your options are, to do the wedding.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, that's what I want too, because religion's not a part of my life.
Yeah.
You're going to see that number go up too.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if anybody's been to a wedding in a church where the couple did not like regularly attend to before, but they fucking suck. It's truly like I sat down with these people for 20 minutes and I'm going to tell your closest friends and family all about you because I've known you now for 48 hours. Like it is truly like,
Woman,
why would you
submit.
want that?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to skim through a couple more of the, first bonus.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Bridgerton.
I'm going to talk more about the UK.
We're going to talk about Wildcat, a movie about Flannery O'Connor, written and directed by Ethan Hawke, shot by my good friend Jeff Stortz. And that's it. Oh, and I showed Hemant a picture of me in my toe shoes, and he was confused and angry.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to read a bunch more reviews, okay? You tell me when you get bored.
Yes, you get two.
No. Mark Chandler. Oh, I don't know why I said your last name, Mark, but we've chatted. I've been following Hemant since before any podcasts.
Nice.
I think I first learned about him from my favorite defunct podcast, Reasonable Doubts.
Oh.
He may have been on to talk about I sold my soul on eBay. As a teacher, I liked the fact that he was a teacher. I listened to the podcast from the beginning, the pre-Jessica era. Mark did not exist. I started this podcast. Sorry, I don't know. I do not know where this shit started, but everybody thinks I am like Johnny come lately on this podcast. Gang, I bullied him into this podcast. Do you think he wants to start a podcast? He does not. He has to see me every week. I fully bullied him, and now we're financially tied together, and that's why bullying is good. So anyway, guys, get your history right. It's really insulting. I do remember laughing as Hemant interviewed a porn star for some reason.
That did happen.
Oh,
We did
I
interview.
was there for that, Mark.
You were there for that.
I lived deep in the woods in a very rural era in Stefanik country. Is that a person who I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
I would pass around
Elise Stefanik country in New York.
Oh, okay. I will pass around a dozen Trump signs on my way to school tomorrow, so I listen to your podcast to stay sane. If you're curious about your listeners, I was looking you guys out to put faces with voices, and I find that you're almost exactly the ages of our children. Carrie asked why Dottie isn't in this. Lucy has been listening since day one. I used to read the blog daily back around 2012. Me too. 2011 is when I started reading your blog.
Nice.
And when the podcast started, shortly after that, I was like, I guess I'll figure out what this whole podcast thing is about. Now, 10 years later, I've cycled so many podcasts out, but yours has never left my feed.
Oh,
Happy
thank you.
anniversary. Isaac, first podcast I ever listened to. I'm just going to skim through a couple of these. I think y'all bring the perfect balance of fun, serious, and genuine that most news-type podcasts don't have. I've had the opportunity to meet Jessica and Mikey. Isaac, I got so drunk that night. I was not ready for the altitude change. I'm very sorry. Y'all helped me survive the Trump years and stay informed that about things I'd never hear otherwise. What else? Okay, from Rachel. I went to see Seth Andrews at an event, and somebody I met there recommended Scathing Atheist, but I was going through a lot at the time, and it was too cynical for me. God, Rachel, I fucking feel you. I've had to stop so many shows because everybody's too mean to each other. The two of you are... So I started looking for something friendlier, if you will. The two of you are definitely all sunshines and rainbows,
Oh, yeah.
because who could be with the two... I think she left out a word, but that's okay. But Jessica's humor and commentary in response to Hemant hit the spot for me in a great, very relatable way.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are so nice. I remember listening to early episodes during my Peace Corps service, says Hillary. Dylan says, I love my other atheist shows, but Friendly Atheist featuring Hemant's amazing coverage, his not another white dude perspective, and Jessica's glorious wit, heart, and honest ongoing female perspective have made this show a must. The combination of Jessica and Hemant make the show one that fires me up, breaks my heart, gives me strength, and helps me relate to my wife in ways I never expected.
Oh.
Wow, Dylan, that was a
Thank you.
strong contender. Let's land on that. If anybody wants to...
You can support this show by going to patreon.com/friendlyatheist
Please support the show by going to patreon.com. I have medical bills, and Mikey is still out of work, and I think I might be dying of stress soon. So patreon.com/friendlyatheist podcast.
We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.